This next poem is called A Stirring. It's a sonnet, actually. It's a sonnet about the end of the world. And I wrote it a few years ago, so we're a little bit closer to the end of the world now than we were when I wrote it.
Poetry was something that I always loved, and I kind of imagined, and I think I still do, that everyone loves it. We are linguistic beings, and language is one of the first things that we encounter to understand the world. Being able to play with language and have fun with language and try to understand things with words was always something important to me.
Once upon a time, in the land of Hilltopia, the people lived in harmony with urban grace.
I was a rapper, I like to put words together and entertain and impress people with my words. And went to college, and that's when my rap got a dose of academia.
I got my first book of poetry that I recall recognizing as poetry when I was about 8, and I just fell in love with it. It was a special language. It was a really special way of communicating love and beauty.
So this first poem is called Travel Planning.
I started writing poetry, I was probably in middle school, and I started out really as a songwriter and being influenced by the singer-songwriters of the mid-1960s.
You are the classic line, the genuine article, elegance and pizzazz, form and function. Girl, you look good.
I didn't really get invested in it until the early 2000s when I heard some spoken word artists that just had such an impact on me that I realized that that could be a really powerful form of communications.
And it was inspired by conversations that I've had with young people that I work with, people that I've organized with on the streets. When we talk about oppression, it's such a big, abstract, overly used words, and often we don't know how to define it, and I found it really hard to define.
I began writing poetry when I was in middle school and just began developing that craft. I discovered hip-hop music, and so from there I was just growing really excited about wordplay and talking about social issues.
Life is so full of coincidence. Its coincidences coincide.
It is an art form that I think is sort of peculiarly positioned to allow us to reflect and to think about what brings meaning to our lives.
I do it as a form of self-expression and to share experiences that I've had. A lot of times people have experiences and they can articulate them. Sometimes I can't either, but in a poem, I can share my experiences with you, whether it was a good experience or a bad one. I can write it down and it's more digestible in the poem. If it's something tragic, I can use metaphor and kind of bury the feelings under the metaphor. And it's more deliverable and people accept it and they get it. And it's shared experience.
Tonight, maybe, you'll sleep in a better place.
Poetry is a craft demanding a really very short, succinct way of having to say something. Poetry, by its very nature, demands that you say things in a way that people can read into different meanings. It's an abstraction.
There is such a great freedom to speak what's on our mind and in our hearts. It's a place for us to celebrate what we believe in. It's a place for us also to rail against what we think might be unjust. It's a really special craft that I feel I can really be my true self in.
Johnny Damon was dead. 9 times, 9 games, his hair was moving, his feet were flying, but everyone in Boston would whisper, "Dead man swinging."
Poetry for me is actually an exploration, a journey. The act of writing is not something where I know what the answer is going to be or what I'm going to express before I do. I have a sense of it, but I actually take a journey while I'm writing. And then I think by the time I'm finished, when I'm successful, I've kind of discovered something as a result of the poetry that I'm excited to share with other listeners.
Hush on the streets, there's a hush in her heart. Drizzle hits the pavement, and each way she looks is dark.
So there are a lot of things that I want to explore as a poet laureate. One is exploring queer youth homelessness and sharing the stories of youth who have experienced that in Tacoma, and doing it in a platform of art, sharing the stories through a monologue that we'll compile later, and then bringing together a panel of different folks in the community, like community leaders, youth and young adults, service providers, where people can come together and bear witness to these stories and also talk about what are the strategies that we can come up with in our city to provide spaces and solutions for youth homelessness.
So from that day forward, and in the stone of the well it was set, the young man was now known as the poet laureate.
It has been amazing to watch the position continue to grow and to evolve over the years. Everybody who has come to the position has brought a different style, different work. They found ways to make that role their own and to really kind of nurture it, and it's been great to watch it grow.
The fact that we had all of the laureates from past generations or past years that were there, and there was such a sense of community and involvement and a weaving of both the literary community, the activist community, left, right, and center. That was very, very memorable for me as a culminating activity with the final presentation made by the new poet laureate, Kathy Wynne. And I felt like we were passing this program to a brand new strand of folks that I believe need to have forums to express through poetry.